On a quiet January afternoon in 1996, 9-year-old Amber and her little brother Ricky were out riding their bikes when Ricky had returned back to their grandparents' house, but Amber did not. Only 8 minutes went by before she was never seen again, and panic arose throughout the whole nation. What happened remains a mystery to this day. However, from this tragedy, we gained the Amber Alert, which has saved thousands of children's lives over the past couple of decades. But before I get into today's episode, I'd like to give a little bit of a viewer discretion warning. Today's episode will have talks of child murder, sexual assault, and might have some details that are difficult for some viewers to hear. But with that being said, hi, hello, welcome. I'm your host Emma, and you're listening to the Dead Awake podcast. Amber Hagerman was born November 25th, 1986, in Arlington, Texas, to her parents Richard and Donna. However, her parents did end up getting split up in 1994. Amber was described to be a sweet and caring daughter and also a great older sister to her little brother Ricky. She was a Girl Scout who loved to write, loved going to school, loved playing with her Barbies, and she especially loved her hot pink bicycle. Overall, she was just your average fun little girl. However, on January 13th, 1996, horror had struck the town of Arlington. Amber and Ricky were out riding their bikes when Ricky had decided that he wanted to go back to his grandparents' house, but Amber really wanted to continue riding her bike, and so she did. She stayed out, continued riding her bike like any normal child would. But that's when only 8 minutes had passed, and Jim Kevill, a local in the neighborhood, had saw a black pickup truck approach Amber and take her in broad daylight. Kevill said that Amber was screaming and kicking, but the man still was able to get her in the car and drove off at 3:18 p.m. He was swift to call the cops, but when they arrived, all that was left of Amber was her hot pink bicycle laying on the ground. The description that Kevill had given the police was a white or Hispanic male who looked to be in his late 20s, early 30s, and was under 6 feet tall and had dark hair. Amber's parents were quickly notified, and a huge investigation quickly broke out. It was filled with local police, FBI agents, and even volunteers. The search had intensified over the next couple of days. There were flyers, and it had started to gain massive media attention all over the nation. Her parents had pleaded for her to come home safely and for whoever took her to be sent away for good, which as they should, because as a parent, well, I'm not a parent, but if I were a parent, I couldn't imagine my child being taken, and that's just horrible, not knowing where they were. But only 4 days after Amber had gone missing, a security guard had found her poor body face down in a drain ditch behind a local apartment complex only 4 miles away from where she was taken from. She was found with no clothes on and cuts all over her body and especially on her neck. Her parents had woke up to a call at around 1:30 a.m. and they refused to believe that it was her. They really just did not want to give up the hope that Amber was still out there, alive and well. The local police had stated that they believed her body had moved there by the rising water from a rainstorm that had taken place not too long before she was found. And they think this because earlier that day there was a maintenance crew that was reported to be in that area earlier that day. At the medical examiner office, they officially ruled her death as homicide, and the cause of death was found to be the cuts on her throat. Her autopsy also showed that there was sexual assault involved. Now, she was said to be kept alive for 48 hours before being murdered, and whether or not the sexual assault happened when she was alive or after she had passed, either way, I don't want to think about it, because whoever did that to her is just gross and disgusting. Like, how could you do that to a 9-year-old child? There was DNA taken from the scene and from her body, but because she was sitting in water for so long, the evidence had pretty much almost fully degraded. and with that, over 4,000 leads were investigated, but none with success. However, with this devastating murder, some good did come out of it, because after Amber's murder, a local Texan mother, Diane Simone, couldn't stop thinking about it and went to a local radio station where she proposed the Amber Alert. She said that a broadcast system should immediately take into effect, giving urgent information to the public, and it should be named in Amber's honor. And in October of 1996, the police actually made this happen and called it the Amber Alert. In 1997, the first Amber Alert actually took into effect and was successful. This had started to spread all over the nation, and in 2003, President Bush had officially established the Amber Alert program, and it has gone on to save thousands of children within the last couple of decades. Now, circling back to Amber's case, her murder is still out there, and police have not given up. Their public tip line still remains open at 817-575-8823. They're also trying to re-examine the DNA with modern technology and try to get a break in the case. Amber's disappearance and murder has gone on to leave a legacy on our nation, and to this very day, it has saved over 1,000 children and will go on to save many more. And that, my friends, is the case of Amber Hagerman. If you found today's episode interesting, consider giving a like, follow, or review on whatever platform you're seeing this on. And today's episode was pretty short, but I'm really excited for next week's because it's going to be longer, and I'm excited because it's our first haunting story. Yay! I'm excited. And it's just in time for spooky season to start. But with that being said, if you have any stories, episode ideas, or even feedback, you can email me at deadawakepodcast@gmail.com, and I will also have my social medias down below in the description. Now, let's turn out the lights, get comfy, and stay dead awake.